My name is Philip Travis. I'm one of the organizers of the lecture series, and today we have a really exciting talk. We have Professor Bill Culver, who is Program Manager of Network Systems Technology and Cybersecurity. He possesses a master's degree in Organizational Management and Information Technology and a number of industry certifications, all of which are listed right there, and I'm not going to read them all. He's very certified. This should be a really interesting talk. It's 10 tips for cyber sanity, something that's useful for all of us, regardless of the particular discipline that we may have or interest that we may have. So Bill will talk for about 40 minutes, and then we will take questions and answers from both Bradenton and our Venice campus. So thank you for coming out, and welcome Bill Culver.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. Obviously this is a topic that impacts everyone regardless of what you do, so get right into it. Can anyone tell me what these companies have in common? Exactly. They were all hacked before this year. So just a little background before we get into the tips. How about this year, the first 6 months, which is the most recent statistics that we have compiled. There were 945 data breaches for a total of 4.5 billion records. 4.5 billion with a B. And that comes out to about 291 records every second. So you are potentially in that record, and one of those records. Sachs, Lord & Taylor, they got hacked, 5 million records. Fitness Pump Up, and the thing is, you got to look at the hacks when you see them in the news. They may be companies that are underneath the companies that they list as the name, so subsidiaries and so forth. This company, 6 million records, they left a core back-end server exposed without a password. So basic 101 security, right? Then we had Sacramento Bee, which is a newspaper out in Northern California in Sacramento. 19.5 million California voter records were compromised there. A firewall was not restored during routine maintenance. So we can't make their job easy, right? Basically that exposed 19,501,000 voter records. Then we come into Ticketfly, which is kind of like Ticketmaster, Ticketron, any of those things where you go buy tickets. They got another 26 million there. And then Panera's. The My Panera site, I mean, who doesn't like, I mean, I have Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, you know, you name it. I love getting those free coffees, right? But is it worth it? And Panera, they got, which my wife has the Panera account, thankfully. They got the names, email addresses, physical addresses, birthdays, and the last 4 digits of the user's credit card numbers. So they can pretty much put together what you are. Then we had Facebook, and this number keeps changing. There's actually been another breach since this was compiled that added to this number. So that's another 50 to 87 million. And then we have MyHeritage. I like this one. I have genealogy. I study genealogy and stuff. So this one is MyHeritage. It's another place where you can send your DNA to get checked. So they haven't gotten the DNA yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. So this one was discovered on October 26, 2017. Anybody want to guess when it was made public that they had a breach? Almost, right? So it was June 4th, so a good 7 months after the breach before anybody even knew about it or was informed about it. Then we had Under Armour, 150 million records with the MyFitnessPal. We've all got stuff tracking how many people have digital watches on it, they're tracking their health and all that now. And that one, they got usernames, email addresses, hashed passwords. And then Exactus. Anybody know what Exactus does? Well, I had some notes here, but I can't see them because I'm showing this to the people in Venice. But basically, they collect information through cookies, and they compile it. They have, I think it's 4.5 billion records that they compile, and then they use that information for marketing. So they're able to get that. They got 340 million records were hacked there. The database was sitting on a publicly accessible server. So normally when you configure these things, you put your database behind your firewall and you have a way to get in. And I'm not going to go into the technical details, but that was a bad thing. And then this one, this is the biggest one of the top 10 for the first 6 months. Security breach in India. Reporters were able to access names, email address, phone numbers, and postal codes after paying an individual about $8. So for another $5, you could get software that would print out their identification card so you could get access to their government services like food and fuel. Right? So they got 1 billion records there, basically everybody in India. So all those top 10 that I just went through was about 1.7 billion. Remember, it was 4.5 billion the total that I told you for the first 6 months. So this is just the top 10. That doesn't count. There's small breaches happening all the time. So it's something we need to all be constantly aware of. How do they get the information? There's different ways they can get it. Phishing, hacking, malware. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through here. Individual mistake. I mean, that's like leaving the firewall, unsecured, leaving the server out there with no password. That's an individual mistake or entity mistake. We've got external threats, vendors. The Home Depot hack that happened was because a vendor came in and had insecure connection into the Home Depot system, and that's how they got access eventually into the Home Depot data. So some of the facts. 1 in 13 web requests leads to malware. So when you click on something, 1 of every 13 times is going to get you to a malware type site or potentially to a malware type site. And what the malware does is it downloads onto your computer and then it starts doing bad things, turns you into a bot for a botnet or all kinds of other geeky terms I could throw at you. There was 92% increase in new malware downloader variants. This is just between 2016 and 2017. 80% increase in new malware on Macs. I'm sure there's some people here that thought Macs couldn't be attacked. That's not true. 46% increase in new ransomware variants. We've all heard about the ransomware where they encrypt your hard drive and then they want you to pay money. And it's usually not cheap. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes. 600% increase in attacks against IoT devices. IoT is one of the newer buzzwords you may not have heard. It stands for Internet of Things. So that's like the smart thermostat, the Ring.com camera, the refrigerator that tells you need to get milk, all those things, the cameras that are out here, the card readers, anything that's not a computer or tablet or phone, right? That's Internet of Things. 54% increase in mobile malware variants. So those are things that can impact your phone. So we're susceptible there. 27,000 new mobile variants were discovered in 2017. As opposed to, I believe it was 17,000 the year before that. So they just keep coming. There was a 29% increase in industrial control system, which I missed an M there, ICS-related vulnerabilities. Industrial control systems are things like electric grid, sewage system. So imagine if somebody got in and turned off the sewage system. Wouldn't be pretty, right? So it's bad enough we have to deal with things like that potentially in a hurricane, let alone somebody intentionally doing it. 13% overall increase in reported vulnerabilities. So it's a constant thing we all need to be aware of. And I've got a couple little maps here. I'm going to show you where and when do these attacks happen. And hopefully they come up good. Internet Explorer, great. So this is a map from a company called Kaspersky, and what these companies do is they have devices that people buy or software, and they collect data from that so that they can kind of show us what we're getting into. So these are all attacks that are going on right now as we speak. And the different types of attacks are listed down here. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but basically, let me switch that over. It's pretty, right? But you can see that depending on what type of attack it is going to have a different impact. Oh, they use cookies. I wonder if it's part of Exactus. And then I've got one more that's Fortinet is another company that does a similar thing. And these are the maps that they have. So these show you real time down here what's going on. The orange is high vulnerabilities, blue is medium, and so forth, in which countries. So it's constantly going on. We are always under attack. Few SCF stats. I spoke with our security people and cleared this. They've sanitized most of it. But this shows some of the phishing attempts Yeah, hang on one second. Yeah, this is phishing attempts. So these are, it's hard to read because I had to change the slide presentation, sorry. But these are 4-hour blocks. And you can see this number is about 400 or 500 up here. So these are how many phishing attacks are happening just to our network here. And most of these, all of these are blocked for the most part, okay? In fact, all of these are ones that were stopped. But this is what we have to deal with. This is as an industry, as you know, depending on which organization you're with. Now, obviously, we're a larger organization, so we've got somebody that's able to deal with this and constantly maintain and manage this. But think about the small organization, the mom and pop store or somebody like that. They've got the same stuff on a lower proportion, but it's the same impact. Whoops. This one is malware. Every 4 hours, how many we get there. And this one is forwarding. That's another technique that hackers will use. They'll actually kind of take over somebody's address and forward it out. You can see this one here forwarded 77 messages through our system, or they tried to. This one shows how many malicious emails this one day that we've got a sample here, 739 just in one day. So what is phishing? Anybody know? It's basically when they send you an email and they try and get you to just give them some information, go to log into a site with your credentials, give them your password, things along that line. So how can we tell if something that we get is going to be a phishing attempt? Misspelled word, bad grammar. I mean, come on. These people should have spell checkers in their programs because it's like the first flag, right? Impersonal or generic vague recipient. So like dear customer. If your bank writes to you, it's going to be dear Mr. Culver, right? It's not going to be dear customer. You have money coming from another country. Yep, you do. And then we've got the website claims to have found viruses on your computer. Unfortunately, I have a sister-in-law that actually fell for this one, and she called them, gave them her credit card information, let them remote to her computer for 2 hours. So we haven't heard from her since. No. Fortunately, it's an in-law. There's no DNA connection. Or the FBI pop up illegal activity, right? So, the FBI is not going to pop up and say, we see you have illegal activity going on. That's not how they operate. Yeah. So passwords, let's talk about passwords a little bit. Everyone knows what a word cloud is, I'm going to assume? Word cloud, basically, it looks at a bunch of words and it says what's the most common ones, and they're represented by the size. So the most common password in this word cloud is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's make it a little easier for them, okay? Password, it looks like password is the second one. These people here, their people said you need to do 8 or 9 characters. They had to go up to... And then this is real creative. QWERTY, that's the top row of the keyboard. There's some other ones that I'm not going to point out. But like, for example, if you see Bucks up here, sorry, you're a Bucks fan. That's, you got to deal with it. But most Americans keep track of their online passwords. How many people, well, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because that might embarrass people, but I'm guilty. I'll tell you that. I've got places where I use the same password. I'm in the process of changing things. You want to randomize them. There's a whole bunch of things we'll talk about. Most people try and memorize them in their heads, which means it's going to be difficult to keep track of. How many people, 10 accounts, 20 accounts, 30 accounts, 40 accounts, 50 accounts. I mean, it just keeps growing every day, right? You go sign up for a new thing, and you got to create a new password. Are you going to remember it? Oh, I'll just use the same one I used over here. The problem with that is when you get into those hacks, they can look up the password and they're going to guess that your password is the same thing on another site that you got hacked on at Exactus or Under Armour or whichever one it was that they got it from. Some 49% write them down on a piece of paper. That's okay. Not great. Some save them on a note on a computer or mobile device. That's probably a good thing if somebody gets into your machine. Save them in their internet browser, or use a password management program. This is actually what people should be doing, is some sort of password management program. There's a couple tips on passwords, and there's no good tips for passwords. Passwords will eventually go away, hopefully. That's what we keep hearing from the industry techs, because they're the weakest link. We'll go to more biometrics or things along that line. Never tape your password on your desk. That's a good one. I worked 20 years in IT, and I have seen that where people actually have their Post-its right on the screen. It's like, really? Switch to a passphrase. So use a phrase instead of a password. You can use like, my dog has fleas, or something that's going to be easy for you to remember, but is not going to be something for them to easily get to. A lot of hackers will use what's called brute force attack, where they'll just go through the dictionary. And if you're using a regular word like Snoopy or pie, or they'll figure it out eventually. It may take them a while, but with the computers today, they can go pretty quick. Then we want to don't be too obvious. Again, going back to the Bucks fans, right? If you're a Bucks fan and I want to get into your stuff, that's the first password I'm going to try, right? Or Giants, or never save your password in a web browser. And that's particularly important to get in the habit of, because a lot of times you'll go to a computer that's not yours. And if you save the password there, it potentially opens you up because you don't know, you walk away from that computer and now somebody else can get into your account. Then have a unique password for your bank and email accounts now, right? So if those are the ones that you're using, that easy password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you've got that on 18 different accounts, you probably want to change that, make it unique. One trick that some people use is they substitute numbers and letters. So you can use an E as a 3, or a 9 as a P, or a P as a 9. Not a great technique, but it's better than using, password. But trust me, they will try P455W0RD. Okay. You can use a site name somehow in the password. So if you use some places recommend using like a root password. And then you add the site name somehow at the end of it. So that way you've got something that's somewhat easy to remember, but yet it's unique for each site. Now, a good hacker will figure out like, hey, I just hacked Exactus, and they got Exactus at the end of their password. I'm going to try, password, Under Armour for the next one and see if it works. And use a password manager. Anybody here use a password manager? Only a couple folks. So there's several password managers out there. I'm not going to recommend one specifically. The one I use, which I'm not recommending, but is a good one, is LastPass. There's 1Password. There's several of them out there. And basically what it is, it's an encrypted database that stores your usernames and passwords. A lot of them, like LastPass, you can put documents in there. You can put other stuff in there too, but it's primarily used to store those passwords. It'll also alert you if you have passwords that are the same, so that you can have it run an audit and say, oh, you've got these 2 accounts have the same password. You should go change one of them. It'll also allow you to change passwords periodically and generate random passwords, which is really what the ideal is. You want to have random passwords, just like a string of characters. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're not going to remember it. So you need to use something like a password manager to manage something like that. And then use a fingerprint reader. Anybody use biometrics at all on there? Like on my phone, I have the fingerprint scan, and some of the laptops now have it and so forth. Something that makes it a little more difficult. I mean, yes, there is the James Bond movie where they take the guy's eye and hold it up to the iris reader or whatever, but hopefully that's not what we're worrying about. I could do without one finger if it comes down to it, I guess. That's my concern, is like, what if I pull my finger, fracture my finger and I can't get into my stuff, right? So I guess you could get more than one click on there. And then lock your screen and log out. So many people don't have timeouts set on their screen. They don't log out. You walk past their desk and they've got stuff open. Just especially if you get up and walk away, you shouldn't leave your computer out anywhere to begin with, but just get in the habit of that. And that's very easy. In Windows, it's Control-Alt-Delete. There's another command in the Macs that you can use to lock it. So, have you been pawned? Anybody know this word, pawned? Pawned is leet speak, slang term derived from the verb own, which means to appropriate or to conquer or gain ownership. So there's a site out there where you can look and see if you've been pawned. Have you been owned? So we're going to check that out real quick on Explorer. So I'm going to use mine as a simple, since it's public record anyway. I will offer myself up for the good of the community here. Oh no, I've been pawned. So I've only been, this is my 5th year at SCF, so I haven't used this email address all over the place. So there's one here that has been, and I don't even know what Net Prospects is. It's something, maybe somebody that I used shared something or was a back end for something else. But I was like, so I know there's a lot more things that are out there, so I was trying to think of something last night, and I came up with a good one. So we're going to see, and it'll show us a lot of the things that have been. It's yourmom@gmail.com. And just so you can see how many hacks there have been, I just wanted to scroll through this real quick. These are all different hacks that your mom has been compromised in. So basically what this site does, there are places on the dark web, and there's a lot more. There are places on the dark web where people who have nefarious intent can go get passwords and buy them for the $5, $8, whatever it is that they're selling them for. You see there's been a few hacks, right? And so you can go out on your own time and check that. Have I been pwned.com and see if you've been in something. And then you might go, oh, geez, I should probably go change that password. Well, if that password on whatever it is used elsewhere, then those other sites are going to be potentially compromised. All right, so now for the tips, which you all came for, right? 10 tips. Number 10. I had fun with PowerPoint on this one. Keep your software up to date. And software includes operating systems, whether it's Windows, Macintosh, Android, iOS. iOS is the software that's used on your iPhones. And don't forget Java, Flash, Adobe, and other helper apps. Some of these things you can set for automatic updates in Windows. If you're running Windows 10, for the most part, it should automatically be set to do the updates. There may be some that are optional that you may want to go take a look and make sure you keep those updated. Java, Flash, Adobe, a lot of those will have pop-ups that tell you to update and so forth. But it's something that you need to take control of. You don't want to have it take control of you. Because once a vulnerability is discovered in an operating system or an application, it's just a matter of, we call them zero-day vulnerabilities. Once they're out there, they start hacking right away. In a lot of cases, you don't have time to wait 30, 60, 90 days to do your updates. You want to get them done as quickly as possible. Number 9, backup and encrypt your data. This can save you if you get crypto locked, if you get ransomware, right? So if you've got a backup of all your photos, because what happens is with the ransomware, you get that ransomware message and you start freaking out, and then you're like, a lot of people pay the money, a lot of people don't. But if you've got a backup, it's less of a concern. Because what do you want? I mean, for most of us, from an individual standpoint, I'm not speaking from a business standpoint. What is it? You want those photos? You want this, the photos of the grandkids or your aunt and uncle, whatever it is, the picnic. And you're willing to pay a bunch of money to get all that stuff back. Plus you've got, your resume and a bunch of other things. But if you back it up, either on a USB drive, or I use OneDrive. You can use OneDrive or Google Drive, which backs it up in the cloud. It will save you from having to make that payment or considering making that payment. You also want to not have it be in the same location as your primary data. And this goes not to security per se, but like let's say your house burns down. If your laptop and your backup are in the same room and you have a fire in that room, guess what happens? Your backup's worthless. So take that USB drive, bring it to the office, leave it at the office. If you want to put it in a safe deposit box or whatever, or if you've got it in the cloud on Google or OneDrive, one of those types of things, then you'll be in better shape. Or you just drop your device, you drop your computer and it breaks. So you could have other reasons why you would lose your data. Number 8, you want to protect your PII. PII is personally identifiable information. Try and share less sensitive information. So everything that's out there, you will be surprised what's out there. One of the last things I have here is to Google yourself and see what's out there about you. You'd be surprised because there could be things you may not realize that your family tree's out there, but cousin Larry out in Connecticut is tracing the family tree, and now all your kids and your family is out there and all their information, their birthdays. You get enough pieces of information to put together, then you can impersonate that person, whether to go to open a bank account or create a passport or whatever it is that they're trying to do. You don't have to share everything. Nobody's going to steal your identity if you share the piece of cheesecake you had, probably, but just think about what you're sharing. Who are you sharing with? One thing I learned from Facebook is there's a reason I didn't keep in touch with some people for 30 years, right? All of a sudden they pop up for a high school reunion. okay, but I don't want to know all the things that they're doing and whatnot, right? Where you share, Facebook, I mean, there's so many places, and how you share it too. There's ways that you can lock down shares if you want to share things to just groups. You can create lists in Facebook so only your family can see it. But remember, once it's out there, it can then be sent somewhere else. Somebody could take a screenshot. The kids think Snapchat's the big deal, right? You can take screenshots of Snapchat if if you know what you're doing. Once it's electronically encoded, it can be shared again. And don't download contacts in rental cars. This was a good one. I got into a rental car I'm the Brain Bowl coach too, and somebody's contacts from the last renter, or maybe 2 renters before, or whatever, were all in there because they got in, they put in Bluetooth for their phone, and what is the first thing it wants to do? Download your contacts. We want to make it easy for you to dial your friends. So, and if you put in home as a phone number, guess what? Now they have your home phone number, they got your address, and they just put GPS and they go right to your house. They may be able to open your garage door opener, who knows? And then consider a separate device for sensitive matters. A lot of people recommend this. So the one that you're doing all the funky surfing or Netflix or sharing photos with, maybe you want to use a different machine that you just do banking with, and you just do some of those more sensitive things with. Number 7. Use strong passwords in a password management tool. I think I hit on this a couple times. Never use the same password twice, and that includes reusing the password, right? So, I used this before, I haven't used it for 6 months, I can use it again. If it's out there potentially in one of these databases, you're going to be in trouble. Another thing is 2-factor and multi-factor authentication. There's 3 ways to authenticate to anything. There's who you are, what you know, and something you have, right? So who you are is your biometrics, your fingerprints, your eye retina scans, voice prints, things along that line. What you know, I know my password, right? And something you have, you may have a token or a chip that you have to read. These companies that I've got listed up here, Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, blah, 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 they all accept multi-factor authentication. And I use it on most of the ones that are here. Actually, as I was preparing for this, I found out that there were other ones that I hadn't been using that I'm going to go enable. But basically what it is, you can set it up so they will send you a text message. So when you go to log in, you have to type in, you have to know your password. That's something you know. And it's something you have is your phone, because your phone's always going to be with you. And they'll send you a text message, and there'll be like a 6 or 7 or 8 digit code. Social Security Administration uses this. I just got the notice to check my benefits because I'm going to have a birthday in a couple months. And they have it too. You go in, and it's going to minimize the amount of times, because how many times is somebody going to have your phone and know your password? Maybe your spouse or something like that, which is okay, hopefully. So there's a bunch of my kids didn't like that I put 2-factor on the Amazon, so they couldn't go on and have me pay for stuff for them. But number 6, don't use public Wi-Fi. Anybody here use public Wi-Fi? Try not to. All right. If you do, use that other computer that doesn't have your banking information on it, right? If you want to watch Netflix over public Wi-Fi, that's probably not a big thing. But if you've got other stuff on that computer that could potentially be compromised, there's some scary stuff going on. I don't have time to go into a lot of technical details, but if you do need to use public Wi-Fi, you want to use a VPN. There's several VPN products out there, Nord, I use Viper. There's a couple of them out there, and they're not that expensive. The other option is if you've got a decent data plan, you can use your cell phone as a hotspot. And that's going to then it's not public Wi-Fi, it's your Wi-Fi. Yes?
So, even in the airport or what?
Especially in the airport.
Okay, thank you.
Airport, Starbucks, McDonald's, you name it. Here, like when we log in here as employees, we have to put in a username and password, so it's encrypted, as opposed to just the free access and Panera's. How about them? I mean, they got hacked. Could some of that information have gotten across? What organizations? I just went to a presentation in Tampa yesterday, and what organizations are able to capture as far as data points? They're now coming up with internal cell towers essentially for buildings, because especially in Florida, we've got so much concrete and steel. I mean, how many times do you go to a hotel and you're paying $150, $250 a night for a room, and the Wi-Fi is terrible? So they're putting in like repeaters that'll make the signal stronger, but as part of that, they're capturing all the data. they're not necessarily looking at your password and everything, but they're looking at the different points of like this person does this over here, and then they move over here and they do this. It's pretty incredible what's out there. Your data, the data about you is very valuable and is becoming the biggest commodity. It's the oil of the 21st century. Number 5, review online accounts and credit reports regularly. Can't emphasize this enough. There's 3 credit agencies: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Equifax, hopefully everybody saw on like the second slide that they were one of the ones that got hacked. You want to review your annual credit reports. What I recommend is you get 1 free credit report from each agency per year. So what you can do is take these 3 agencies, do one every 4 months. All right, so that way you've constantly be looking and seeing if anything pops up, like, hey, you're looking for things that are outside the norm. You can also set, like on my bank accounts, I have it set so if a charge goes through, I get a notice. If a ATM transaction goes through, I get a notice. I don't like my Bank of America because they take too long to give me my notices, but I'll be standing at the gas pump, I pump gas and I get the notice for my Citi card right away. And that's good, because if something comes through and you go like, hey, is this, legit? And then you find out when your kids did it and you're like, okay, well, I guess it is. You can freeze your credit reports. It used to be $10, which is, I paid that originally, but now it's free. As of September 21st, there's a new law. You can freeze your credit reports. What's that going to do? That's going to make it so that credit inquiries can't be done. And that's what a lot of times what these hackers will do is they'll try and utilize your credit information to open up accounts and things under your name. The inconvenience it's going to cause is if you're like, hey, honey, let's go buy a new car today. Guess what? You got to unlock your credit report before you can go to the car dealer and have them run a credit check to see what kind of interest rate they're going to get you. Just takes a little more thought. My wife is now not opening as many cards to get the discount at whatever store it is, so that's helped our credit rating a little bit. Consider credit card single-use options. So, for example, I have B of A, and they have a thing called Shop Safe, and you can create temporary credit card numbers that you can set for just one use. You can set a credit card number that you can use for just paying this specific charge. You can set the limit, how much you want it to be. You can set a credit card number that's only got $250 credit limit. You can set the expiration date so it expires 3 months from now. And that way your main credit card number isn't compromised. It all feeds back into that same account and that same statement, but it's not the same number. So if that vendor that you're dealing with, that commercial enterprise, if they get hacked and that credit card number gets stolen, it's one less thing that you have to worry about, because I only had this credit card number out for 3 months. So I'm not going to worry about that one. Number 4, use mobile devices securely. We all have our cell phones, tablets, and various other sundry things. Now we got smartwatches and all that stuff, right? So you want to have a short timeout. Yeah, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. Hopefully everybody is using something other than a PIN, like a fingerprint or something along that line, or a design, something that's not easy to guess. You want to, again, going back to the software one, you want to update your operating systems and apps, keep them updated. I found one that I mean, I have all my stuff, I think I know what I'm doing. I have all my stuff set to kind of automatically go, and I found one that hadn't been pushed in like a month. So you got to keep on top of it. Be familiar with your devices. And it's a little tough because the operating systems change. Android's got, Oreo or Nougat or whatever it is this week. iOS comes out with a new version. So it may change the interface a little bit, but just stay on top of that. Review and question your app permissions. Why does the Panera app need access to my contacts? Why does why do they need access to my photos? And there may be a totally legitimate reason. It may be that, for the Panera app, you take a picture of something and they cook that for you. So there's different reasons. But think about it. Not everybody needs access to all your stuff. And most apps are keyed to show you what permissions they're requesting when you install them. And read the reviews too. They can tell you a lot about what's going on when you go to install an app. Enable location tracking. Find My iPhone, or for Android, it's Find My Device. This can be very helpful for if you lose your phone, you misplace it, or you can reset it. The only thing that's a potential problem is if the battery starts draining and you don't look for it in time. I've also used it to track my kids. If I'm paying your cell bill, I got your password so I can track your phone, right? And then consider, and that's a privacy thing, you have to discuss that with your kids and make sure that they're, you don't want to do it behind their backs, but consider using payment apps such as Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, and Google Pay. And this kind of goes back to the single password, the single card, because it creates another card number that's tied to your card, but it's not the same number. In fact, I don't even know what it is on my on my Samsung Pay. All I see is the last 4 digits. So there's some number with 12 stars that I don't know that's being used for my charges. Number 3. Control physical access. Don't leave your devices unattended. Few students here, not a lot, but in the library, if you're working in the library, you don't want to leave your laptop there and run down to Starbucks. Not that there's bad people everywhere, but yeah, there's bad people everywhere, so you just want to... And it may not even be people that realize that they're bad. They may just have something wrong with their computer that then is able to reach out to your computer somehow. I mean, there's different ways that they can have these things happen. Consider the Internet of Things. So we've got smart homes, thermostats, video doorbells, lights, Alexa, all these things. Think about what they are. If you use them, make sure you review the configurations for security. They've gotten better over time. They used to come with standard name admin, password, which is, nobody would go in and change it. And I remember one time I was walking around, out for a walk, and I pulled up my phone and it's like, hey, do you want to connect to this thermostat? I was like, man, that's just too tempting. So I didn't, but just crank the heat up, in Florida and go to jail. Number 2, use email and the internet safely. And after everything I've told you, you're like, how can I do that, right? So some of the things you want to be aware of: phishing attacks and ransomware. Just constantly be vigilant. Don't just click on things automatically. Again, companies will not ask you for your info or verification. The IRS does not call up and say, call us back at this ridiculous phone number or you're going to go to jail. They don't ask you to click here and send in your username and password and confirm your information. You want to be vigilant with email. Think before you click. Hopefully everybody has seen or knows that you can hover over links before you click them, and it will show you in the bottom where that link is actually taking you. So it may say www.google.com, but if you hover over it on the bottom, it may say www.badhackersite.com. So browsing, you want to use secure connections, HTTPS, the locks. Hopefully all these things have been driven home in the past, but if not, that's what you want to look for. You want to disable things like JavaScript and ActiveX. You may need them for certain things, but you want to make sure you know where you're using them and that there's a reason for it. And then use a credit card versus a debit card when making online purchases. The reason for this is you still have, quote, limited liability, but in a debit card, they could drain your account before you realize it. And then you still got it. Then you still have the problem. Now your checks are bouncing and the other things are going down, right? Whereas with a credit card, it's credit, so it's not going to necessarily stop another transaction from going through. And then the last tip: never forget you're a target. Remain aware. Stay informed. It can happen to anyone. And remember, let's see if this works. I gotta go over here. And that is all I got. So, questions?